Hello there, and welcome back to this quiet corner of the universe, where curiosity hums softly and time moves at the pace of light drifting through dust. Tonight, we're looking much closer. We're turning our gaze to something moving silently across the vast dark right now. An object called 3I Atlas. It's not a name that rolls off the tongue, is it? It sounds more like a secret file than a traveler from the stars. But that's what it is, a traveler. A visitor that doesn't belong here. An interstellar object, passing through our solar system just once, before vanishing forever into the black. We've only seen two like it before, Oumuamua and Borisov. But this one might be different. Something massive is about to be revealed. Imagine standing under a night sky so clear that the stars look close enough to touch. The air is cold, still, and the silence is the kind that makes you aware of your own heartbeat. Somewhere above, invisible to the naked eye, a faint shape glides through that stillness. Ancient, indifferent, older than our sun itself. It's not a comet in the usual sense, not quite an asteroid either. It's something between those definitions, and perhaps beyond them. Its chemistry, its motion, even its origin, challenge what we think we know about the neighborhood we live in. Picture that for a moment. A rock the size of a mountain, streaked with frozen gases and cosmic scars, entering our solar system after wandering for millions, perhaps billions of years, through interstellar space. It carries no flag, no purpose, and no sound, and yet, in its silence, it might tell us something about the birthplaces of worlds, or about what else might be traveling out there with it. Maybe you're listening late tonight, with a lamp burning low beside you, or maybe you've already turned out the lights. Either way, I'm glad you're here. You can leave a quiet comment if you'd like, tell me where you're listening from, or what time it is right now where you are. Funny, isn't it? A fragment of rock drifting between stars. And here we are, two voices sharing a single passing moment. So settle in. Let your thoughts slow down to the pace of celestial drift. Because before we learn what 3I Atlas might reveal, we first need to understand what it is and how something could travel across the galaxy, unseen, until it suddenly arrives at our doorstep. It began, as these things often do, with a flicker, a faint streak against the dark, captured by the Atlas telescope in Hawaii. Nothing dramatic, just a line of light cutting across a star field. But the computers noticed what the eyes might not. Its motion didn't match anything bound to our Sunday. It wasn't from here. Within hours, astronomers realized they were watching something unprecedented, a visitor from the stars, on a one-way path through our solar system. It had no orbit to call home. It came from somewhere else entirely. Let's talk about what happens when the universe sends you company. You don't get a knock on the door or a text that says, "Incoming celestial object, ETA, 3 days." You get data numbers that whisper of something moving too fast, too free. You get astronomers hunched over glowing monitors at 3 in the morning, sipping coffee that tastes like regret and discovery at the same time. You get a tiny pattern in the noise that turns into a story older than our Sunday. You wouldn't have noticed it, not with your eyes. It wasn't bright, not like a comet with a proud tail. It was a quiet traveler, a stranger among suns, crossing our cosmic neighborhood with all the urgency of a thought drifting through a dream. Stars hum low, the night's begun, a whisper slides between each one. That's the first Riemann image for the mind, a soft pulse of motion. In the dry air atop Mauna Loa, the telescope hummed like an old refrigerator holding the secrets of the cosmos. The data streamed in faint dots, faint hopes. Then came the realization. This light was different. It didn't curve where it should. It didn't care about the sun's authority. It was simply passing through. Cold light runs. No place to stay. It bows to none. It fades away. Imagine that. A rock the size of a mountain, older than our planet, slipping through space like a seed on a cosmic wind. You could almost feel it brushing by, invisible, yet monumental. It carried no banner, no purpose, no sound. It was a cosmic commuter on an endless route, pausing briefly in our solar rest stop before merging back into interstellar traffic. Dust meets flame, dark meets blue. Time forgets what stars once knew. You might think of the astronomers as calm professionals, but at that moment, they were kids again, giddy, sleepless, staring at something they could never touch. They whispered over headsets, compared calculations, argued softly about orbital mechanics, and then sat in silence as the realization settled in. They were seeing something that had never belonged here. Eyes on sky, breath held tight. A stranger walks through borrowed light. The emails spread, first across universities, then through observatories. Someone in Chile confirmed the trajectory. Someone in Spain refined it. Someone in Tokyo whispered that it might not be alone. The news spread like a secret everyone wanted to share, but no one fully believed. Night unspools, data sings, silence wears invisible wings. The scientists gave it a name, 3I Atlas, not poetic, but official. 3 for its order, I for Interstellar, Atlas for the telescope that found it. You, sitting here in your quiet room, can picture the moment they type that in a bureaucratic christening of something that doesn't know or care what we call it. Still, the name stuck. The name gave it story. Names like maps, marks like scars. We claim what never truly ours. When word reached the public, the theories came fast. Some said it was an alien probe. Some said a slingshot fragment from a dying star. Some said, half-jokingly, that it was the universe dropping by to check on us like a cosmic landlord, ensuring the tenants hadn't burned the carpet. You smiled reading that, didn't you? Because deep down, you wanted it to be true. Dreams ignite, reason bends, wonder starts where knowing ends. In truth, 3I Atlas was less a mystery and more a message. Not a deliberate one, but a reminder. The universe doesn't care about our categories. We call things comets, asteroids, planets, moons, but space calls them debris. Every so often, that debris visits, brushing against our sense of importance. Stone and star, drift and fade. The cosmos writes what can't be made. And here's where it gets funny, absurd even. You could say that while we scroll through our phones and complain about traffic, the galaxy casually drops by with a relic from another system. It doesn't beep, it doesn't glow, it doesn't perform, it just glides silently by, older than language, indifferent to whether we notice. You can almost hear it smirk. You people build telescopes, and I build patience. Light moves slow, thought moves fast. Nothing built is meant to last. As it passed through our solar system, 3I Atlas gave us a few weeks of measurable brightness, a few hours of wonder, and maybe a few seconds of humility. Because that's all you get when eternity visits a reminder that everything solid, even the earth beneath you, is just passing through in its own way. So as you lie there, listening to this quiet story, imagine the dark above you, not as empty, but full of silent travelers you'll never see. Some are rocks, some are ice, some are dust. All of them, like us, are temporary guests in a universe too vast to notice. Stars forget, shadows stay, even light must lose its way. And so 3i Atlas continued onward, the stranger among suns. Its visit was brief, its mystery complete. It left no words, no signs, no promises. Only a faint streak across a telescope's memory, proof that for a moment, the stars themselves looked back. Let's talk about names, those little labels we use to make the infinite feel manageable. You name a pet, so you can call it home. You name a storm, so you can blame it later. And when astronomers name something from beyond the stars, it's their way of saying, "We've noticed you. Please don't destroy us." So, we called it 3i Atlas. The name sounds sterile, doesn't it? Like a password you'd forget right after resetting. The 3 marks its place in line, the third known interstellar visitor we've caught in the act. The I stands for interstellar, a reminder that this wanderer doesn't belong to our Sunday. And Atlas, of course, honors the survey telescope perched atop Haleakala, tirelessly scanning the skies, a mountain watching another mountain drift through space. But names do more than catalogue. They humanize the incomprehensible. You've done it too, called your car. She cursed your Wi-Fi like it could hear you. The universe doesn't need names. It's our nervous system that does. When faced with something that defies comprehension, we slap a name on it, as if that gives us ownership. This rock came from another star? Great. We'll call it Steve. Yet 3i Atlas defies even that comfort. It's older than naming. It existed before tongues, before sound, before memory, back when stars were still taking attendance. Think of that. This object might have formed in the debris of a long-dead sun, its siblings scattered like cosmic ashes, its parent system now reduced to radiation and rumor, and yet here it is, caught in our sky, given a neat little label as if that changes anything. You can almost imagine the scientists during that naming meeting. A conference call filled with bad audio, one person's cat meowing in the background, and someone saying, "We'll just stick with the catalog designation for now," because deep down, they knew no single name could carry the weight of interstellar silence. Still, we tried to make it ours. Some nicknamed it the Quiet Traveler. Others preferred Ghost Rock. A few romantic souls in online forums called it the Messenger. And for a brief moment, it felt like a character in a story, a mysterious visitor who drifted too close to the campfire of the sun, warming itself before continuing into the dark. You can almost hear the whisper, "I've come a long way, don't mind me." The funny thing about humans is that we never outgrow our myth-making. We name storms and call them temperamental. We name galaxies and pretend they're friendly. When we say 3i Atlas, it's not just a label, it's a spell, a way to hold something untouchable in our mouths. The moment you say it aloud, the syllables taste like metal and cold wind. And perhaps that's the point. We don't name to define, we name to belong. You call a star Sirius or Betelgeuse, and suddenly it feels less like a hydrogen furnace and more like a neighbor with a funny name who happens to be 600 light years away. You call this object 3i Atlas, and for a moment, it's not alien, it's familiar. But if you could drift alongside it, no sound, no gravity, just the faint glow of distant suns reflecting off its scarred surface, you'd realize how absurd our naming rituals are. It doesn't know what 3 means. It doesn't know what an I or an atlas is. It doesn't even know we exist. It's like naming the wind or giving a social security number to a hurricane. Still, we can't help it. To name is to anchor ourselves in chaos. Without names, everything feels like static. The universe becomes too large, too unfeeling. So we make order out of the endless. You name your fears so you can fight them. You name your hopes so you can chase them. And we named this visitor so we could believe, just for a heartbeat, that the cosmos noticed us too. Of course, there's a kind of poetry in that irony. The very act of naming something eternal makes us fleeting by comparison. When 3I Atlas finally leaves, when it vanishes into the black and becomes another anonymous wanderer, our records will remain, tucked into archives, labeled and time-stamped, while it drifts on, nameless again. Maybe that's the joke. The universe lets us think we're in charge for a moment, handing out names like cosmic librarians before erasing our ink with the wind of time. Every name we give the stars is really just a mirror held to ourselves. So tonight, as you listen, maybe glance at your ceiling, that quiet imitation of the night sky. Think about all the things you've named in your life: pets, passwords, dreams, fears. Each one a tiny act of control against the infinite. Maybe 3I Atlas doesn't need a name at all, but you do. Because when the sky feels too big, giving something a name is how you remind yourself that you exist in it too. And maybe that's why this quiet traveler feels so important. It isn't here to deliver a message or reveal a secret. It's here to remind us that even the smallest flicker in the dark can inspire stories. And stories, after all, are the only names that last. Let's talk about distance. Not the kind between you and your fridge at midnight, but the sort that turns light into history. Imagine standing on your balcony and looking up at the faintest star. Now imagine that star so far away that even its light, traveling at cosmic speed, grows tired before reaching you. That's where 3I Atlas began, or maybe even farther, somewhere between Pegasus and Cygnus, or perhaps in the blank, nothing between constellations where no myth ever bothered to settle. A star once lived. It was old, swollen with pride and helium. Then, in one final act of cosmic drama, it died. Maybe it collapsed inward, folding light into silence. Or maybe it blew itself apart, like a birthday candle in reverse. Either way, its planets and debris were cast into darkness, and among them, a fragment, a splinter of a world, began its long, lonely voyage through interstellar space. Picture it, a chunk of rock and ice, no bigger than a mountain, spun into exile. For millions of years, it wandered through nothing. No sunrise, no sunset, no sound. Just the faint hum of the universe, the soft hiss of background radiation that never quite stops. You could float beside it and never know you were moving. Because out there, distance doesn't feel like travel. It feels like eternity. Every so often, it would pass near a star, not close enough to feel warmth, but close enough for gravity to wink and tug. That's how it found its way here. Through chance, through math, through the slow choreography of invisible hands. No map, no mission, just motion. It was the universe's version of flipping a coin, and somehow we were the table it landed on. You, sitting in the quiet of your room, can imagine its journey, how cold it must have been, how silent, how profoundly unbothered. Humans panic when Wi-Fi drops for 10 seconds. 3I Atlas crossed 1,000 light years without so much as a sigh. It's strange to think of such endurance. Over time, cosmic rays bombarded its surface, painting it darker than coal. Molecules froze in layers, ancient as galaxies. The rock aged not in centuries or millennia, but in epochs. Entire species rose and fell on other planets while it drifted, unchanging. Empires burned out. Stars flickered to life and died again. And this quiet stone just kept going, the ultimate slow traveler. You might picture it tumbling through the dark like a lost thought. Sometimes, glinting faintly as a distant sun caught its edge, sometimes disappearing into the kind of black that swallows memory. It wasn't alone. Not really. The galaxy is full of these vagabonds, fragments of failed worlds, testaments to stellar chaos, billions of them, all unseen. The universe is less empty than we think. It's just shy. Now, somewhere in its billion-year drift, a chain of coincidences lined up. A gravitational nudge here, a passing star there, and its path bent ever so slightly toward our solar system. It didn't aim for us. The odds of that are microscopic. It just happened, like the way you might drop a seed and watch it roll perfectly into a crack in the sidewalk. We are that crack, the random landing spot in the pavement of space. And what does that say about us? That everything we've ever done, all our wars, loves, inventions, and breakfast cereals, exist in a system small enough for this stray rock to stumble into by accident. The cosmos doesn't notice our noise, yet somehow it delivers messages anyway. Not words, not symbols, just motion. If you could follow its journey backward, you'd find the ghosts of its birthplace. A shattered orbit, a sun long gone, a region of space haunted by invisible memory. Some of the atoms in 3I Atlas may be older than the Milky Way itself, forged in earlier generations of stars. Think about that matter so ancient, it predates the galaxy that caught it. You could hold it in your hand, and it would still remember fires that burned before our sun existed. Scientists suspect interstellar travelers like this are the debris of planetary birth, the leftovers of creation. Every solar system throws a few stones when it forms. Over billions of years, those stones drift outward, carrying fingerprints of their home stars. They are, in a sense, cosmic postcards, but the kind you can never send back. And yet, when 3I Atlas crossed into our solar system, we noticed. A tiny flicker on a telescope in Hawaii became a message decoded across the planet. I exist, it said. Not in words, but in light. And for a moment, we looked up together, and the universe felt smaller. There's a strange comfort in that, knowing that even the loneliest traveler can, by sheer accident, find an audience. Maybe it's not a message from beyond. Maybe it's just the universe reminding us that everything drifts, everything collides eventually, and sometimes, if you're lucky, someone notices. So the next time you stare into the night sky, remember, somewhere out there, another 3I Atlas is on its way. It doesn't know it yet. It doesn't know us. But someday, another telescope will catch another flicker, and another tired astronomer will lean forward, eyes wide, realizing that once again, something ancient and nameless has found its way to our door. Let's drift for a moment, not forward, not backward, just sideways through eternity. Because between one star and the next, there is no true up or down, no place to land, and no reason to hurry. It's not a road, it's a graveyard made of nothing. Dust, ions, frozen molecules, the universe's leftovers. And somewhere in that cold, black silence, 3I Atlas slept. To say it was asleep is almost generous. Sleep suggests dreams, or at least rest. But this wasn't rest. This was waiting in a void, where waiting means nothing, because time itself moves like syrup. Imagine a stone the size of a mountain, turning slowly, its surface scorched to obsidian by unfiltered radiation, its core colder than logic. For eons, it drifted. No sunrise, no wind, no whisper, just darkness, pressing against darkness. If you could have touched it, your hand would have frozen solid before thought could reach your brain. The vacuum around it was near absolute zero, so cold that atoms themselves barely remembered how to move. It's the kind of cold that makes the word cold feel inadequate. You'd need a new language for it, one built from size and static. Sometimes, as it turned, it would catch the faint glow of distant galaxies, not enough to warm it, but enough to paint its surface in ghost light, silver on black, like frost across an ancient tomb. If rocks could remember, 3I Atlas might have recalled the star that made it, or the chaos that tore it free. But memory requires purpose, and this thing had none. You, sitting there in your quiet room, might think of it as lonely, but loneliness is a human luxury. To be lonely, you must first expect company. Out there, between suns, there's no such expectation. There's only existence, bare and unbothered. Still, let's indulge the thought. Imagine 3I Atlas as a sleeper, the last remnant of a forgotten world, drifting through the dark like a dream that the universe once had but forgot to wake from. Its crust hardened into glassy armor, its heart, if it ever had one, cooled into silence. Even cosmic rays could barely scratch its indifference. It was endurance shaped into stone. Once in a while, a stray photon would strike its surface, a cosmic hello traveling for millions of years. The rock didn't answer, but the light still marked it, a flash so brief it would shame a blink. Out there, that's all connection is. A photon meeting an object and moving on. It's cosmic small talk. And yet, there's beauty in that emptiness. We imagine space as silent and still, but that's only half true. Space breathes. Magnetic fields stretch and shimmer. Dust drifts in slow tides. Invisible radiation whispers like distant surf. Every so often, a pulse from a dying star ripples through a heartbeat from a cosmos too vast to care, yet too alive to stop. 3I Atlas felt all of it, in the way stone feels rain not with thought, but with presence. In its frozen minerals, chemistry quietly rewrote itself. Atoms bonded and broke apart, forming new compounds under the relentless caress of radiation. It was, in its own way, a laboratory silent, perfect, and patient beyond comprehension. Scientists call this space weathering. Poets might call it the universe painting with time, stepped in velouve. For uncounted ages, it simply was. Suns were born, galaxies collided, civilizations rose and fell, all in the blink of its geological eye. If eternity has a sound, it's not a choir, it's a hum, a deep, low vibration that lives in the space between atoms and meaning. And for millions of years, 3I Atlas floated inside that hum, unblinking. Then, without warning, everything changed. Not for the rock it never notices, but somewhere nearby, gravity tilted the balance. A passing star's pull nudged its path, just enough to alter its forever. It didn't wake, because stones don't wake, but its long, motionless exile began to shift. The drift became direction. The stillness became travel. Slowly, it began to fall towards something brighter, a star with planets. One of them blue, and that's how the long sleep between stars ends, not with a sound, not with drama, but with mathematics. A billion-year nap interrupted by coincidence. Gravity reached out, whispered, "This way," and the traveler obeyed without knowing why. You could almost call it fate, if fate weren't just a poetic word for physics. By the time it entered the outer edge of our solar system, 3I Atlas had already forgotten how to be still. The sun's pull found it, drew it closer, and for the first time in uncountable ages, light touched its face with warmth instead of distance. Dust melted, ice sighed. And if you listened closely, impossibly closely, you might almost hear it. The sound of a mountain waking up from a dream too long for memory. Let's rewind the universe to the instant a few sleepless humans finally noticed the traveler's return from oblivion. It happened quietly, the way revolutions usually do in astronomy, inside a spreadsheet. The Atlas telescope in Hawaii was making its nightly sweep, catching faint streaks of motion across the digital dark. Most of them were ordinary, bits of rock circling politely around the sundae, but one line of pixels refused to behave. A technician squinted. The streak cut straighter than any orbit should, as if it had someplace else to be. The software hesitated, then flagged it with an alert tone that sounded like a microwave announcing popcorn. In the control room, coffee cups rattled. A scientist muttered something unprintable and leaned closer. What they saw was nothing dramatic, just a smudge of light sliding across a field of stars. Yet hidden in that smudge was everything, an object from beyond our solar family, strolling through like it owned the place. You can picture it, the air humming with electronics, the faint smell of warm circuit boards and cold caffeine. Outside, the volcanic slopes of Haleakala lay under a quilt of wind. Inside, someone whispered, "That can't be right." Then, half joking, half terrified, "Run it again." They did. The numbers didn't blink. By dawn, the data had traveled farther than the object itself. Emails leapt oceans, graphs filled inboxes, and telescopes from Chile to Spain turned their mirrors toward the same patch of sky. Astronomers love a good mystery. It gives them permission to skip breakfast. The news spread, the way rumors always do, first with caution, then with emojis. "Possible interstellar?" Someone typed. Another replied, "No way, not again." But it was happening again. A new visitor, only the third we'd ever confirmed, cutting through our solar system on a path that meant no return. If you'd stepped outside that night, you wouldn't have seen anything. No glowing tail, no cinematic fireball, just a universe pretending to be still while something ancient brushed through it. Above you, satellites blinked like lazy fireflies, and somewhere among them, 3I Atlas glided silently past, older than language, younger than memory. In the observatories, the excitement was polite but electric. You could hear it in the way people typed faster, in the way someone finally opened a fresh bag of coffee beans instead of rebrewing the old pot. Data scrolled, charts plotted, models spun. "It's on a hyperbolic trajectory," one voice said, reverent as prayer. That phrase means escape, a path too wide for gravity to close. Once in, then gone forever. There's an absurd beauty in that. Imagine catching a snowflake with tweezers, studying it under a microscope, and realizing it's already halfway melted. That's astronomy in a nutshell, learning everything you can about something that's already leaving. Meanwhile, the internet did what it does best: panic, playfully. Theories bloomed like algae. It's a ship. It's a warning. It's space debris from an alien IKEA. Scientists tried to keep straight faces during interviews, insisting it was probably just a rock. But even they spoke softly, as if afraid the object might overhear and take offense. A few poetic souls in the media gave it nicknames: the silent guest, the star drifter, the cosmic minimalist. You have to admire that last one. It fits a traveler, carrying nothing but itself. For weeks, telescopes tracked its approach. The sun's gravity bent its path slightly, like a polite bow. As it neared, the object brightened just enough for the world's biggest mirrors to glimpse texture, dark, irregular, pitted from ages of radiation. No signals, no outgassing, no drama. Just the steady shimmer of reflected light saying, "I was here." You might wonder what that looked like from its side. After all, it had wandered billions of miles through total night. Suddenly, there was warmth again, a glare from the sun spilling across its frozen face. Dust lifted, gases hissed faintly into the void. For the first time in eons, 3I Atlas felt heat. It didn't notice, of course, but the universe did. Every telescope, every spreadsheet, every curious human became part of its brief moment of illumination. And then came the math. Scientists love math the way bakers love recipes. It keeps things from exploding. They plotted its trajectory, its velocity, its brightness curve. The numbers told the story. Roughly 26 kilometers per second relative to the sun, an eccentricity greater than 1, meaning it wasn't bound by gravity's leash. It had entered our solar system from somewhere near Lyra, and in a few months it would be gone toward Hercules, a casual tourist making no promises to return. There's something humbling in realizing the universe doesn't schedule visits. It just lets them happen, and we scramble to pay attention before they're gone. When the final confirmation arrived, yes, it truly came from outside. There was a collective exhale in labs around the world. No applause, no champagne, just quiet awe. Someone whispered, "Third one." Another said, "Imagine how many we've missed." Outside, the dawn over Hawaii was pale gold. Inside, the monitors still glowed with that faint streak of light, now immortalized in databases and dreams. The moment of discovery was over almost before it began. Yet in that fleeting instant, a fragment of the cosmos had brushed against human curiosity, and both were changed. So the record shows it simply. Discovered April 2024 by the Atlas Survey, Haleakala, Hawaii. But you and I know it was more than that. It was proof that even in a universe 13 billion years old, surprises still drift by at inconvenient hours. And sometimes all it takes to notice them is one sleepless observer, a stubborn telescope, and a willingness to look twice at a smudge of light. Let's start with the math, because in astronomy, math is the poetry. You don't get drama, you get decimals. The first thing they did after spotting 3I Atlas was measure everything that could be measured, and then measure it again, because the universe has a way of laughing when you round up. Velocity, about 26 kilometers per second relative to the Sunday. That's fast enough to leave our entire solar system and never look back. For comparison, if you threw your phone at that speed, it would reach the moon in about 4 hours and possibly get better signal there. Eccentricity, greater than 1. That number means freedom. It means this thing isn't looping endlessly like the rest of us, bound to familiar orbits. It came in once, cuts across the sun's field, and then slips back into the void, a one-way ticket through the light. Hyperbolic, they called it, which sounds dramatic, but really just means it's leaving politely, forever. You picture the scientists hunched over their monitors, the glow of data painting their faces ghost blue. Each pixel meant something: motion, brightness, trajectory, a language only numbers could tell. They didn't see a rock. They saw coordinates, calculations, a story written in gravity's handwriting, trajectory, a clean, sharp curve. So clean, it looked deliberate, like something guided, or guided itself. Of course, it wasn't. That's the beautiful part. Chaos can still draw a perfect line when you give it enough time. The cosmos has been practicing for 13 billion years. We've been here for maybe 300,000. We're toddlers trying to critique calligraphy. Still, for a moment, The data was unsettling. The precision, the neatness, no cometary tail, no erratic spin. It moved like a plan, not an accident. As one researcher said, it's either nature at its tidiest or something pretending to be nature. That's the sort of sentence that ruins coffee breaks. You imagine them staring at the graphs, the line of data points, tracing a path so smooth it could have been drawn with a ruler. One scientist mutters, "That can't be right." Another says, "Check it again." Then the plot sharpens, and there it is, a perfect arc through the solar system, brushing near the orbit of Mars, then off toward the deep. If the numbers had a sound, it would be a hum, steady, low, mathematical. Every object in the sky sings in math, and 3I Atlas was a note we hadn't heard before. Its frequency sat somewhere between elegance and unease. They measured its brightness, next the faint shimmer of sunlight bouncing off its surface. No flare, no flicker, just a consistent reflection. That told them it wasn't spinning wildly, wasn't shedding material, wasn't panicking like comets do when they get near warmth. It was calm, stoic, you could almost say smug. Somewhere, a grad student wrote equations on a whiteboard, so dense they looked like a new language. Somewhere else, a computer crashed under the weight of too much awe. And in the middle of it all, a quiet realization settled. This visitor had been traveling longer than humanity had existed. The oldest math in the world, gravity, had sent it to us. The measurements stacked up like poetry disguised as code. Velocity, inclination, argument of perihelion, numbers that sound like spells. The universe doesn't need adjectives. It speaks in constants. You, listening now, can picture that arc, a silver thread slicing across the solar system, drawn by forces so precise they make our best spacecraft look like paper airplanes. Each decimal place a breadcrumb leading from eternity to here. And yet, in all that precision, there was mystery. Why this path? Why now? Why here? You could spend a lifetime on the equations and still not find the answer, because the numbers tell you how, but never why. That's the great cosmic joke. The universe shows its work, but not its motive. Imagine, for a moment, being that rock. You've been drifting for eons, untouched, unobserved. Then suddenly, light hits you, cameras track you. Entire species talk about you on morning shows. For the briefest cosmic instant, you're famous. Then, just as suddenly, you're gone again, the numbers closing behind you like a door. Scientists watched the trajectory update in real time, the coordinates scrolling like the heartbeat of a world they'd never touch. Each new measurement narrowed the uncertainty. By the end of the week, they knew exactly where it had come from and exactly where it was going. The in-between, the reason it existed at all, remained unknowable. And that's the thing about precision. It feels like truth, but it isn't. The numbers are beautiful, but they don't care. They describe the universe. They don't explain it. Still, we cling to them, to decimals and diagrams, to the illusion that enough digits can reveal meaning. Maybe that's what makes humans so endearing, our need to measure everything, even wonder. So the data was logged. The models were saved. The orbit was pinned down to the tiniest fraction. 3I Atlas had passed its test. Perfect trajectory, perfect speed, perfect indifference. And as it sailed on, the universe whispered the same quiet message it always does. The math is flawless. The meaning is yours to invent. Let's talk about shapes, the universe's favorite guessing game. You'd think that after centuries of staring at the sky, we'd be better at it. But no. Even with our finest telescopes and radar arrays, The cosmos keeps its geometry under lock and key. 3. Atlas was no exception. When the first radar data came in, the scientists squinted, frowned, and collectively said, "That can't be right." It wasn't round. It wasn't tumbling like a careening baton. It wasn't behaving like anything they'd modeled before. The shape seemed inconsistent, elongated in one scan, compressed in another, sometimes bright, sometimes barely visible. The math couldn't settle on a single silhouette. It was like trying to take a photo of a ghost that refuses to hold still. One simulation suggested it looked like a spindle, long, thin, elegant, maybe hundreds of meters from end to end. Another model insisted it was flatter, like a cosmic coin tossed into infinity, shimmering edge-on against the Sunday. Then a third simulation appeared, showing something potato-shaped and deeply unimpressed by our curiosity. The truth was, no one knew. Space is shy. It gives you shadows and dares you to draw the rest. You imagine the frustration. A team of exhausted scientists arguing over pixels. It's oblate. It's prolate. It's confusing. One researcher even compared it to a croissant, which, to be fair, says more about her hunger levels than her data. But the point was clear. 3. Atlas defied our love for symmetry. You might not think that matters, but in astronomy, shape is everything. It tells you how something formed, how it spins, what it's made of. A round body means time and gravity have sculpted it into balance. A jagged one means violence, collisions, fragmentation, the scars of cosmic history. But this was something in between, like a riddle carved by physics and then forgotten. Radar images showed faint reflections that didn't match its rotation. That implied a strange surface, part metallic, part dusty, with reflectivity that changed depending on angle. Like a mirror half covered in soot. Some speculated that it might be hollow. Others suggested it was coated with exotic ices, so dark they swallowed most light. The debate was civil, as scientific debates go, meaning nobody threw a telescope, but several coffees were slammed a little too hard. In the middle of all this, a quiet thought crept in. What if the shape wasn't fixed at all? What if the thing itself was changing, outgassing, shedding dust, subtly shifting as sunlight touched it after its long, frozen exile? That idea kept everyone awake longer than caffeine ever could, because if it was shifting, that meant it was active, not alive, not sentient, but dynamic, a body that refused to remain static under scrutiny. You, lying in the dark now, can almost picture it, a fragment of another world, rolling slowly through sunlight for the first time in ages, its surface hissing faintly as ancient ice evaporated. Not a clean shape, but a living silhouette, morphing with every ray of heat, the kind of thing that makes artists weep and engineers panic. NASA's radar specialists tried to reconstruct its form with computer models' three-dimensional approximations made from faint echoes bouncing off the object. But the data was too sparse, too erratic. The result looked like abstract sculpture, lumpy, asymmetrical, hauntingly beautiful. One intern reportedly said, "It looks like a loaf of bread that saw eternity." And somehow, that description stuck. In the grand tradition of cosmic mysteries, everyone had a favorite theory. The mathematicians liked the spindle, neat, predictable. The physicists liked the disk simple, aerodynamic, though air doesn't exist in space. The romantics preferred the potato, because, really, who doesn't want the universe to occasionally resemble lunch? But here's the thing about looking into space. You never truly see it. You interpret light. You decode shadows. Even with the best instruments, what we get are outlines, not truths. The cosmos sketches, and we color it in. We want it to make sense: round planets, flat rings, tidy spheres, but the universe isn't tidy. It's creative. There's a quiet humor in that. Humans spend billions of dollars building machines to ask questions that the universe answers with maybe. You can almost imagine 3i Atlas smirking as the data poured in a celestial game of charades, where we keep guessing the wrong shape. Eventually, the consensus, if you can call it that, was that 3i Atlas was irregular, elongated, and rotating slowly along an axis that even gravity seemed unsure about. It wasn't elegant, but it was real. The kind of truth that resists tidy metaphors. When the final radar maps were presented, the room fell silent. On the screen was not an image of certainty, but of ambiguity, a soft blur of form in motion. One astronomer broke the hush with a sigh. "It's beautiful," another whispered. "It's mocking us." Both were right, because the shape of 3i Atlas wasn't the point. The point was that we saw something, a shadow that traveled billions of years just to flicker through our skies for a heartbeat. And in that brief flicker, it reminded us that the universe doesn't owe us definition, only wonder. Let's talk about smells, or at least what would have been smells if space allowed them. The first chemical readings from 3i Atlas drifted across the monitors in neat, color-coded peaks. Faint traces of cyanide compounds, carbon monoxide, and dust. The same ingredients found in comets, yes, but scrambled, uneven, peculiar. Too much carbon, too little ice. It wasn't behaving like any comet we knew. It was, as one scientist put it, a recipe missing half the steps and all the frosting. Spectroscopy is a fancy word for listening to light. Every element hums its own tune, and by spreading that light into a rainbow, scientists can hear the music. But the song 3i Atlas sang didn't fit any sheet they had on file. Hydrogen lines here, carbon spikes there, and just enough cyanide to make everyone nervous and fascinated. The spectrum looked like an unfinished sentence, one that ended on a cosmic, "Wait, what? Cyanide?" Yes, the same compound that terrifies humans in movies and murder mysteries. But in space, it's as common as gossip. It's one of the building blocks of organic chemistry, a molecule that helped spark life on Earth. Funny, isn't it? Down here it kills you. Up there, it starts everything. But what baffled everyone was the ratio. Comets are supposed to be icy, frozen time capsules from the early solar system. Yet 3i Atlas carried more dust than ice, as if it had once been a comet but got tired of the job. It's as if it used to be a comet but got bored halfway, one researcher joked, staring at the graphs. Everyone laughed, partly because it was funny, and partly because it was true. The rock was chemically confused, like a space teenager going through an identity crisis. Not a comet, not an asteroid, just something awkward in between. A hybrid that refused to fit in any neat category. Nature, as usual, doesn't care about our filing systems. When sunlight began to warm its surface, astronomers expected it to vent gas, that dramatic cometary sigh as frozen ices sublimate into glowing tails. But instead, it merely shrugged. A few wisps of vapor, a small spike in carbon monoxide emissions, and then nothing. It was as if it tried to sneeze, thought better of it, and went back to brooding. You can almost picture it, a dark fragment spinning through sunlight for the first time in millions of years, surface crackling, releasing faint hints of its past life, like a campfire that refuses to die completely, whispering one last puff of smoke before going cold again. Somewhere in a laboratory, Someone zoomed in on the spectral graph, hoping to find order in the chaos. The peaks and troughs looked like an EKG of a heart that wasn't sure if it wanted to beat. "This thing doesn't make sense," they muttered. Another voice, older, calmer, replied, "That's why it's beautiful, because that's the secret truth of chemistry. Beauty hides in imbalance. You find creation not in perfect ratios, but in the mistakes. The universe's most interesting stories come from molecules that refuse to play by the rules. And maybe 3I Atlas was one of those mistakes, a leftover experiment from a solar system long gone, flung into space before it ever finished baking. Imagine a planet forming around a newborn star, dust gathering into clumps, clumps into rocks, rocks into mountains. Then something goes wrong. A collision, a flare, an explosion. One fragment escapes, still carrying traces of its half-built chemistry. For billions of years, it drifts, unfinished, until one day we catch its reflection and realize we're looking at a cosmic prototype. The funny thing about these discoveries is how they always circle back to us. When scientists say odd chemical composition, what they really mean is we don't recognize ourselves in it. Every molecule we study is a mirror, showing us what we know, and more painfully, what we don't. In the end, the readings were logged, the papers written, the debates politely paused until someone with a bigger telescope could argue better. But the mystery lingered. Too much dust, too little ice, too much identity for something that shouldn't have one. It felt like the rock itself was teasing us. You want answers? I've had eons to forget them. You, lying there now, might wonder, does it matter? It's just a rock after all. But in that rock's chemical fingerprints are the echoes of creation. The same carbon that built it once floated in clouds that would someday form stars, planets, oceans, and people. The same cyanide that stains its surface once drifted through the nebulae that gave us DNA's alphabet. So maybe it's not just a chemical curiosity. Maybe it's a letter from the universe, written in a dialect we've almost forgotten the language of beginnings. And as 3I Atlas continued past the warmth of the sun, its chemistry quieted again. The cyanide froze, the carbon dusted itself into stillness, and the object faded back into shadow. Silent, incomplete, indifferent. The mystery wasn't solved. It simply moved on. Let's rewind for a moment, not to the beginning, but to a déjà vu that astronomy can't quite shake. Because when 3I Atlas appeared, it didn't arrive alone. It brought a memory with it. The memory of Oumuamua, the first traveler that dared to make us question what we really knew about visitors from the stars. To the veteran astronomers, it was all strangely familiar, that feeling of both wonder and mild professional panic. Years earlier, Oumuamua had darted through the inner solar system with a similar kind of elegance. No tail, no trail, no apology. It accelerated without jets, brightened and dimmed like a cosmic strobe, and left the community arguing in half whispers. It was, as one researcher put it, the guest that shows up, uninvited, rearranges your worldview, and leaves before dessert. When 3I Atlas followed, it felt like a sequel, quieter, subtler, but undeniably related. The same odd motion, the same faint mystery of chemistry and shape, the same refusal to behave like anything we'd ever catalogued. If Oumuamua was the shocking debut, 3I Atlas was the slow, contemplative follow-up, the art house version of the same enigma. Of course, scientists don't like sequels. They prefer clean data, repeatable behavior, predictable math. But these objects weren't playing along. Both Oumuamua and 3I Atlas moved as if the universe had nudged them gently with a finger. a motion too small to explain, too consistent to ignore. One astronomer called it the acceleration problem. No visible jets, no gas emissions, no reason for the extra push. And yet there, it was a subtle drift, as though space itself had whispered, "Keep going." Some speculated sunlight pressure could do it. Others muttered about geometry and reflection. A few stared too long at the data and said nothing at all. The similarities between the two objects stacked up like riddles. Both were dark, reddish, carbon-rich. Both had traveled for unimaginable distances. Both entered the solar system from unexpected angles, lingered briefly, and then vanished into deep space again. And both refused to reveal what they truly were: comet, rock, fragment, or something older, stranger, nameless. You can picture the meetings, slides full of graphs, everyone trying to sound calm while secretly thinking, "Not again." Someone inevitably joked, "What if they're siblings?" Another countered, "What if they're scouts?" The room laughed, but not too hard. Humor is a coping mechanism when physics starts flirting with fiction. Oumuamua had left scars, not physical ones, but intellectual ones. It forced astronomers to admit how little we truly know about what drifts between the stars. When 3I Atlas arrived, it reopened those old questions, like a dream revisiting the same landscape, but with slightly different lighting. Could these interstellar visitors share an origin? Perhaps fragments from a single long-dead planetary system, flung outward when their sun exploded. Maybe they were cousins, pieces of shattered worlds now wandering alone, their trajectories diverging across millennia. Or maybe, and this is almost comforting, they were just coincidences, separated by cosmic odds so vast they make lottery tickets look statistically responsible. But coincidence has its charm. The universe, after all, doesn't repeat itself often. To see two of these objects in a human lifetime is like watching two snowflakes from different storms land on the same windowsill. We couldn't help but wonder if something larger was at play, a hidden current, a pattern just out of reach. Imagine it, a cosmic river, invisible but real, sweeping through the galaxy and carrying fragments of lost worlds with it. Every few million years, one crosses our neighborhood silent, ancient, a souvenir from someone else's beginning. Oumuamua was the first we noticed. 3I Atlas was the confirmation that it wasn't alone. For scientists, that realization felt almost mythic. It meant we weren't just studying our solar system anymore. We were sampling the galaxy, catching driftwood from other shores. The resemblance between the two also rekindled the wilder theories, the ones that make science communicators sigh and the public lean closer. Were they artificial, probes, relics of civilizations that no longer exist? The official answer was, of course, no. But the unofficial answer was a quiet maybe, not because anyone believed it, but because no one could quite disprove it. That's the funny thing about mystery in science. It isn't the lack of data that haunts you, it's the abundance that refuses to agree. Every telescope, every reading, every spreadsheet whispered something different. And all those whispers together sounded a lot like, "We don't know." You, sitting there under your ceiling of quiet stars, might wonder if they're both still out there, Oumuamua and 3I Atlas, traveling on parallel paths through the dark. Maybe one day they'll pass near each other again, two travelers from forgotten systems, sharing a moment of cosmic recognition before drifting apart forever. For now, though, we watch the sky and wait, because every mystery, once discovered, changes what we expect to see next. And somewhere in the distance, beyond the reach of our instruments, another traveler might already be on its way, A third whisper from the stars, carrying the same message as the first two. You are not the center. You are the audience. Let's talk about odds, the kind that make even mathematicians sigh and refill their coffee. Because if 3I Atlas and Oumuamua are truly interstellar wanderers, then space isn't as empty as we like to think. It's not a desert. It's rush hour traffic. We're just terrible at seeing the cars. Think of it this way. The solar system is a stage, and the curtain is drawn back only for a heartbeat. Every so often, something crosses the spotlight. A stranger, a traveler, a fragment from a story that began light years away. Then it's gone again, swallowed by the dark before we can even decide what it was. If you do the math, and scientists love doing the math, even when it ruins the mystery, the numbers are startling. Based on what we've already seen, there should be dozens, maybe hundreds, of interstellar visitors passing through our system every decade. Most are too small, too dim, too fast for our telescopes to catch. They come and go without leaving a trace, like whispers on the cosmic wind. And that means something humbling. 3I Atlas isn't rare. It's just one of the lucky few we noticed. Imagine that billions of chunks of forgotten worlds slipping quietly through the dark, each one carrying dust that once belonged to a sun we'll never see. Shards of planets, frozen seas, broken moons, all drifting between systems like lost luggage. Some might even brush past Earth's orbit without us ever knowing, silent, ancient, and completely indifferent to our curiosity. It's almost funny, isn't it? We talk about the void as if it's empty, but emptiness is just what happens when your eyes aren't good enough. The universe is thick with motion debris, dust, rogue planets, frozen gas clouds, magnetic waves, cosmic rays, radio whispers, all swirling through each other in a dance so vast it looks like stillness. Stillness, it turns out, is just movement. We're too small to measure. You can picture the researchers trying to make sense of the numbers. A whiteboard covered in equations, arrows looping between stars, probabilities stacked like fragile towers. Someone frowns and says, "That can't be right." Another replies, "It has to be." The math doesn't lie, it just refuses to comfort you. If interstellar objects really do drift through every few weeks or months, then our solar system is less a fortress and more a hallway. The space between planets isn't peaceful emptiness. It's a thoroughfare for relics of creation, traveling at speeds that make our rockets look like toddlers chasing butterflies. And here's the truly absurd part. Even now, as you listen, one of them might be passing by. Somewhere beyond Pluto, a dark shard could be slicing through our backyard, unnoticed. No light, no flare, no drama, just a traveler gliding through the gravitational field, waving politely in wavelengths we can't see. The scientists call this the detection bias. We only see what shines. But most of the universe doesn't bother. It exists quietly, radiating just enough heat to remind us it's there, and not a watt more. 3I Atlas just happened to shimmer at the right moment, in the right direction, to catch a telescope's mechanical eye. Multiply that coincidence by billions, and you get the true scale of cosmic wanderers, a population so vast it makes the word rare almost meaningless. Some astronomers are trying to fix that. They're building faster surveys, deeper sensors, telescopes that can catch even the faintest flicker of motion. Because once you admit the possibility that space is crowded, you start to wonder what else we've missed. Maybe a fragment of a world with an atmosphere once like ours. Maybe a rock carrying molecules that never got the chance to evolve. Maybe, and this is where it gets poetic, the the building blocks of someone else's biology drifting past us, unnoticed, while we sleep. It's a comforting kind of unease. To know that the night sky above you, the one that looks still, silent, empty, is actually alive with travelers. You just can't see them. Yet, you might even look up tonight and feel it, that faint tug of awareness that above your ceiling, beyond the clouds, an invisible migration is passing. Not ships, not aliens, just matter on the move. Planetary crumbs, ejected by ancient cataclysms, all heading nowhere in particular. It makes you wonder, how much of the empty night sky is just traffic we can't detect? How many stories have already passed overhead without applause? Because the math says they're out there, not one or two, but thousands, each older than the species doing the counting. The odds of catching another 3i Atlas aren't impossible, they're inevitable. The question isn't if we'll see another, it's when we'll notice that it's been here all along. And in that thought, the realization that the universe is busier, messier, and more alive than we imagine, there's something oddly soothing, because maybe we're not alone in the void. Maybe there is no void at all, just the quiet hum of endless motion, waiting for us to finally learn how to listen. Let's move in a little closer, not all the way, just close enough to feel the warmth of perspective. Because for a brief, shining moment, 3i Atlas wasn't just another distant object or a blur on someone's monitor. It was here visiting, gliding through the familiar geography of our solar system, like a polite stranger who doesn't plan to stay for coffee. At its nearest, it passed within the orbit of Mars, an astronomical near miss. In cosmic terms, that's practically brushing shoulders. Space is big enough that even light takes its time, and yet here was this traveler, threading its path through our backyard, slipping neatly between the planets, like it had checked the schedule first. For a few weeks, sunlight caught its surface just right. Reflected photons, ancient messengers themselves, bounced off the rock and into our telescopes. That was all we got. Faint glimmers, tiny sparks of borrowed light, crossing billions of kilometers to whisper, "I'm here." You wouldn't have seen it with your eyes, not even with binoculars. No streak across the sky, no cinematic flash, just darkness and distance, and one quiet object sailing through both. And yet, the fact that we could track it, at all that our machines could notice such a small piece of the infinite, felt like a miracle, wrapped in mathematics. The world beneath it, of course, went on as usual. People woke up, scrolled through phones, cursed traffic, fell in love, burned toast, never knowing that above them, a visitor from another star was passing silently overhead. That's the humbling part of astronomy. The cosmos doesn't wait for our attention. It just keeps performing. Even when the audience forgets there's a show, the telescopes didn't forget. From the mountaintops of Chile to the frozen domes of Mauna Kea, instruments turned their glass eyes toward the faint trace of motion. For nights on end, they followed it a dot among dots, logging coordinates with the patience of monks copying scripture. Each observation was like a heartbeat. Blink, and you'd miss it. But over time, the pattern emerged. A curve through the solar system so graceful it seemed rehearsed. The path took 3i Atlas inside the orbit of Mars, then outward again, its trajectory bending gently beneath the sun's pull before breaking free. Some scientists called it a close shave. Others preferred gravitational cameo. Either way, the implication was clear. It had wandered just close enough to remind us that space is not empty and that our solar system is not alone. For a while, its faint reflection shimmered on screens around the world. Astronomers traded late-night messages. Got it again. Still visible. dropping in magnitude, fading fast. It became a kind of ritual, a quiet, global vigil for something that didn't even know we existed. If you'd been able to stand on Mars during its passage, you might have seen it as a pale ember sliding against the backdrop of stars. No sound, no motion visible to the eye, just a flicker that might have been imagination, then gone. There's something haunting in that image, a ghost gliding past the realm of planets, neither belonging nor intruding. It came, it reflected light, it left. A cosmic idea, passing through the mind of our solar system and vanishing before the sentence was finished. And yet, it mattered, because for those few weeks, we had proof that even in the unimaginable expanse between stars, there are bridges, temporary ones. Yes, brief crossings of stone and sunlight, but real all the same. Some observers described it almost poetically. It feels like an idea you almost remember, one wrote in a late-night report. Another added, "We won't see it again, but we saw something." That's the kind of science that touches philosophy, the realization that witnessing can be its own achievement. By the time 3I Atlas crossed Mars's orbit and headed outward, its light had faded beyond easy detection. The telescopes returned to their regular targets. The data was archived. The emails slowed. But for a few days after, some astronomers kept glancing at that patch of sky out of habit, as if checking to make sure the visitor hadn't changed its mind. It hadn't. It was already gone, speeding toward the edge of the sun's reach, where heat and gravity surrender to cold and silence again. Still, something about that brief passage stayed with us. The idea that the universe could send a stranger through our neighborhood, unannounced, unthreatening, and profoundly indifferent, and that we, the small creatures on one small planet, would pause our noise long enough to notice. For those who tracked it, 3I Atlas was never just data. It was a reminder that we are seen only because we look, that every faint reflection is a conversation between existence and attention. And in the end, as it vanished back into the dark, it left us with the same gift all wanderers leave: a moment of wonder, small and fleeting, but large enough to make the universe feel, for just a heartbeat, alive. Let's follow the trail, or rather, let's follow the idea of one. Because when 3I Atlas passed through our solar system, astronomers expected drama. A glowing ribbon, a cometary plume, a tail stretching behind it like an artist's brushstroke across the dark. But instead, there was almost nothing. No streaming vapor, no glittering fan, just a faint smear of light so thin it could have been a trick of the instruments. Unlike Borisov, the loud show-off cousin of interstellar visitors, 3I Atlas left behind something far more modest, a trail that barely existed. Borisov, you'll remember, arrived in 2019, trailing a magnificent tail of gas and dust, visible from half the world's telescopes. It screamed, "Look at me!" 3I Atlas, on the other hand, whispered, "If you insist." The first images were confusing. A narrow filament seemed to stretch behind it, then vanish. Some said it looked like powdered glass suspended in moonlight, each grain catching the faintest sunbeam. Others said it looked like nothing at all, a data artifact, a ghost in the sensors. The absence itself became the headline. What sort of traveler leaves almost no trace, yet still bends sunlight around it like silk? You can picture the scientists peering at the screens, zooming in and out, arguing over noise versus reality. It's there. It's not. It's barely. A researcher in Hawaii described it as trying to find a shadow in a room that's already dark. Another in Spain wrote, "Its silence is the strangest part." And in a way, That silence was the message. The faint trail wasn't a failure of observation. It was the nature of the traveler itself. 3I Atlas wasn't shedding much material because it had nothing left to shed. Eons of radiation and cosmic weathering had stripped it bare. Its ice is long gone, its surface sealed under layers of carbon and dust. It was a relic worn smooth by eternity, the bones of a comet that had forgotten it was once alive. Imagine it passing through sunlight for the first time in millions of years. The heat barely penetrates. A few molecules of gas sigh outward, scattering into nothing, leaving behind a trail thinner than smoke. A thread of memory dissolving into the vacuum. The absence fascinated everyone. Humans are addicted to evidence. We want to see the footprints, not the journey. But here was a traveler that refused to perform. It left no trail worth photographing, no plume to trace. Its very invisibility became its story, a kind of cosmic restraint that made Borisov's fireworks seem gaudy by comparison. One astronomer joked, "It's the minimalism phase of interstellar travel." Another replied, "It's not minimalist, it's exhausted." Both were right. After billions of years adrift, 3I Atlas wasn't in the mood to sparkle. It simply endured. For a few fleeting days, its faint residue could be seen with the most sensitive filters. When stretched and enhanced, the data revealed a whisper of reflection sunlight scattering off microscopic dust grains. It was as if the object had exhaled once, softly, before moving on. A sigh made visible. That thin dust, though nearly invisible, told stories. Its composition hinted at silicates, maybe organic compounds, maybe something older, more complex. But the quantities were too small to confirm. The trail was both evidence and riddle enough to prove passage, not enough to explain it. In the archives, the images looked like mistakes, a grey blur, a faint streak, the kind of thing interns might delete by accident. Yet every pixel of that blur represents something extraordinary, the first tangible proof that a traveler from another star had brushed through our solar wind and left the faintest fingerprint behind. You might think of it now, lying in the dark. Outside, the sky looks calm, but above it stretches a river of invisible trails, remnants of wanderers that have come and gone, too faint for eyes, too shy for fame. Each one carrying dust that once orbited a sun we'll never know. There's something poetic in that. The universe doesn't always announce itself with spectacle. Sometimes it speaks in traces, a glimmer, a blur, a nearly imperceptible line of light whispering, "I was here," and maybe that's enough. Because in the end, the absence becomes the presence, the quiet becomes the signal, and we, small and curious, learn to listen not just for what shines, but for what almost doesn't. So 3I Atlas passed, leaving behind not a blaze, but a breath. No fireworks, no finale, just the faintest shimmer of powdered glass, hanging in sunbeam and silence. Then it slipped away, carrying its mystery back into the dark, as if to remind us that sometimes the most profound traces are the ones we can barely see. Let's turn the universe sideways for a moment, because to understand an object, you have to watch how it moves, not where it goes, but how it spins. Rotation is personality. It's the cosmic equivalent of handwriting, the subtle gesture that gives everything away. And 3I Atlas, it turned out, had a very peculiar hand. At first, its spin looked normal enough, slow, rhythmic, the kind of measured tumble you'd expect from a rock that's been asleep for a few billion years. But then, the data started misbehaving. Brightness patterns shifted when they shouldn't have. Reflections changed direction without cause. In one simulation, It spun neatly on its axis like a ballerina. In the next, it rolled sideways like a tired seal. The more they measured, the less it made sense. That's when astronomers realized 3. Atlas wasn't rotating regularly at all. It was twisting, wobbling, precessing a slow-motion tumble that no model could fully explain. Its mass wasn't balanced. Its center of gravity wandered. Some described it as tumbling like laundry in a zero-gravity dryer. One even joked, "It's doing yoga. If you could watch it up close, it would have looked almost alive." A slow, rolling movement that suggested breath, a rock inhaling starlight, exhaling shadows, a quiet rhythm in the void. Of course, it wasn't alive, but it behaved like something that remembered motion rather than obeyed it. Astronomers love regularity. They like spin rates that can be plotted, modeled, and explained over coffee. But 3I Atlas refused to cooperate. Every observation seemed to say, softly but firmly, "You don't know me." Its irregular spin hinted at something deeper, an uneven interior perhaps. Maybe part of it was hollow or fractured. Maybe eons of collisions had reshaped it into asymmetry. One hemisphere might be denser, the other porous, a patchwork of different histories fused into a single body. When sunlight hit, one side warmed faster, releasing tiny jets of vapor, invisible to the eye, but strong enough to nudge its rotation. The result: chaos disguised as grace. Imagine it, a dark mountain turning through sunlight, its surface gleaming in fractured intervals, each rotation uneven, unpredictable, like a heartbeat skipping every few beats. If the universe had a sense of humor, this was it, a traveler that had mastered the art of not spinning correctly. The data teams tried everything. They ran models through supercomputers, adjusting densities, axis angles, surface roughness, even hypothetical cavities. The outputs resembled abstract art shapes bending and twisting like sculptures mid-meltdown. In one rendering, 3I Atlas appeared to roll end over end like a log tossed across a river of light. In another, it drifted in lazy pirouettes, pausing as if to reconsider its next move. Each model contradicted the last, yet all shared one truth. Nothing about this object was simple. The universe had sculpted a dancer with no choreography. One scientist compared its motion to watching a dream try to turn around. Another called it the spin of secrets, because every attempt to measure it revealed only new layers of confusion. You might be tempted to think of it as random, but randomness has patterns too. We just haven't learned to see them yet. Somewhere inside, that tumble was a rhythm older than our Sunday. Maybe its irregular motion was the echo of ancient impacts, or maybe it was just the way physics hums when left unsupervised for a few billion years. And yet, there's something beautiful in that unpredictability. You, lying in your quiet room now, know the feeling, that uneven rhythm of a thought that won't settle, the pulse of curiosity spinning just off center. 3I Atlas was the same, a body in motion that refused to make sense, but couldn't stop moving all the same. As the data poured in, astronomers began to notice tiny shifts, changes in brightness that hinted at reflective facets, maybe ridges or fractures, catching sunlight differently each time. Some joked it was signaling in Morse code. Others said it was just physics being poetic again. Either way, the pattern of light became a kind of language, irregular, haunting, almost conversational. If you watched the light curve plotted over time, it looked like a heartbeat, jagged, inconsistent, but alive with rhythm. Not perfect, but persistent. A message from a rock that didn't know it was being listened to. When the final analysis came out, the report read, non-principal axis rotation with variable light curve amplitude. which is scientific shorthand for we have no idea what's going on, but it's beautiful. And maybe that's the real point. Not every mystery exists to be solved. Some exist to remind us that predictability is the exception, not the rule. 3. Atlas spun the way the universe often does, unevenly, unpredictably, yet endlessly. So the astronomers watched, measured, and modeled. And in the end, all they could do was marvel. Because in that lopsided spin, that slow, unsteady dance in the dark, they saw a reflection of something deeply human, the quiet, stubborn rhythm of existence itself. Let's take a small detour into human nature, because when science meets mystery, it doesn't stay quiet for long. Before the data on 3I Atlas had even finished downloading, the theories had already begun to bloom. They spread across forums, coffee breaks, and late-night conference calls like dandelions in spring, endless, persistent, and only occasionally helpful. Maybe it's a fragment of a shattered planet, someone proposed, ejected when its sun went supernova. Another countered, no, more likely a dormant comet, stripped bare by radiation. A third, bolder voice leaned in with, what if it's not natural at all? And there it was, the theory that launched 1,000 sighs. A piece of artificial debris, perhaps, from some long-gone civilization that had, like us, reached for the stars and missed. The idea was irresistible, the kind that keeps journalists awake and scientists cautious. It wasn't that the evidence pointed to aliens, it never does. It's that the absence of evidence leaves enough quiet space for imagination to echo, and scientists, like poets, dislike silence, so they fill it. You can picture the scene, a meeting room lit by the soft blue glow of monitors, half the team fueled by caffeine, the other half by curiosity, equations scrawled across whiteboards, models spinning on screens like hypnotic puzzles. Someone says, it could be natural erosion, and another murmurs, but it's too smooth. A third adds, unless it isn't smooth, maybe we're seeing an illusion of shape. Every theory solved one mystery and birthed 3 more. The surface reflectivity didn't match typical comet dust. The spin was too irregular for a simple rock. The chemical composition leaned toward the strange, too dusty to be ice, too icy to be stone. It was like trying to diagnose a ghost based on its handwriting. One faction argued for a planetary origin, a chunk of crust ripped from a dying world, frozen and wandering. Another group favored the comet corpse theory, a once active traveler now worn down to the carbon bones. Still others whispered, only half joking, that it might be a relic, a shell, a vessel, a remnant of technology long gone cold. Of course, the sensible ones in the room sighed and reminded everyone, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Then, they turned back to their models, pretending not to glance at the latest online article titled Alien Space Trash Discovered Between Mars and Jupiter. The truth is, the more the object resisted explanation, the more creative the explanations became. Science, for all its rigor, is also an act of storytelling. You gather facts, arrange them into patterns, and try to make the universe sound reasonable. When the facts won't cooperate, imagination steps in wearing a lab coat. It wasn't the first time this had happened. When Oumuamua flashed through in 2017, similar theories erupted. It was natural, it was artificial, it was a rock, it was a probe. 3I Atlas revived that same fever dream, the irresistible mix of logic and longing. Because what if? What if something out there once tried to leave a message, and all that survived was this silent traveler? Of course, The data refused to be romantic. No radio signals, no propulsion, no heat signatures that looked remotely technological, just rock and dust, doing what rock and dust have done since time began, drifting, spinning, and being misunderstood. Still, the speculation had its purpose. It kept people looking up. It reminded us that mystery is not the enemy of science. It's the fuel. Every theory, no matter how wild, was a way of asking the same question. What else is out there? You, listening now, might feel that same itch, that quiet tug of curiosity when confronted with something you can't categorize. It's human nature to fill the silence. We do it with stories, with math, with meaning, even when the universe offers none, and maybe that's okay. Maybe theories are our way of coping with the scale of things, of finding a foothold on the slippery edge of the unknown. Because deep down, every hypothesis, from the cautious to the absurd, says the same thing. We want to understand. In the end, most of the grand theories faded. The alien hypothesis was gently shelved under improbable but fun. The shattered planet theory lost momentum after new models showed the chemistry didn't fit. The Comet corpse idea remained, limping but loyal, the most reasonable story in an unreasonable cosmos. But something about 3I Atlas refused to settle into explanation. Theories came and went like waves, but the object itself remained as it had always been: silent, indifferent, beautifully unhelpful. And maybe that's the lesson it carried with it as it slipped back into the dark, that not every mystery needs to be solved. Some exist just to remind us of our own need, to ask, to measure, to speculate, to imagine, because in the end, the universe doesn't hide its secrets. It simply hands them to us one by one and waits to see how loudly we'll argue about them. Let's open a map, not the kind with cities and borders, but one made of silence and stars, because what makes 3I Atlas remarkable isn't just its orbit, or its strange chemistry, or even its refusal to explain itself. It's when it arrived. Timing, as always, is everything in music, in love, and apparently, in interstellar geology. It came at the exact moment our species had barely become capable of noticing such things. A few decades earlier, it would have slipped past unseen, another anonymous traveler brushing by while we stared at television static and thought that was the universe. But now, our telescopes are sharp enough, our software sensitive enough, and our curiosity insatiable enough to catch the faintest flicker of motion across the sky. In that sense, 3I Atlas is less a discovery and more a confession, a reminder that the cosmos has been doing this forever. We just finally learned to pay attention. If you think about it, that's the quietly thrilling part. Because if we can see one now, then statistically, there must have been countless others before. Entire caravans of wanderers sweeping through our solar system, unnoticed. The sky archives are full of data, endless snapshots, millions of images from decades of surveys, and somewhere in all that noise may hide streaks of forgotten visitors, objects that came and went before we had names for them, before our instruments were awake enough to record their passing. Somewhere, tucked between the pixels of an old photographic plate from 1973, could be another interstellar traveler, a streak, misfiled, mislabeled, mistaken for a satellite or a glitch. The cosmos doesn't hide its secrets. It just moves faster than we look. You can picture the archivists of the future quiet rooms, lined with digital memory, students poring over terabytes of forgotten sky. Somewhere, one will pause, scroll back, and notice it, a faint streak across a field of stars, exactly like 3I Atlas. And just like that, history will expand again. It's humbling, isn't it? To realize that the universe keeps records, but we're the ones who misplace them. Astronomers sometimes call this observational privilege. It's the awareness that our knowledge depends entirely on timing and luck, that we live in an age when our eyes, both human and mechanical, are finally sharp enough to glimpse the small miracles floating by. A century from now, our descendants will laugh at our clumsy instruments and say they barely saw anything. But for now, this is our window. Narrow, precious, temporary. 3i Atlas crossed that window at the perfect moment. It might have passed 100 million years ago through other systems, unseen by any living eyes. But here, in this sliver of cosmic time, it became visible. For a few nights, it had an audience. Then, as quickly as it came, it left, leaving us with questions and the faintest pixelated proof that we're not alone in the traffic of the galaxy. The deeper truth is this: every discovery is a collaboration between curiosity and coincidence. We like to think of ourselves as explorers, but mostly we're archivists, catching accidents. The universe throws us crumbs. We build constellations out of them. Somewhere beyond Pluto right now, another object is probably slipping past, small, silent, undetected. Maybe its orbit is tilted just enough that no telescope will ever notice it. Maybe it passed through already, waving invisibly at Voyager on its way out. The thought is both unsettling and strangely comforting. The galaxy doesn't wait for witnesses. Even in our most advanced sky surveys, we only catch what blinks at us, what dares to reflect enough sunlight for our algorithms to notice. The rest passes unseen, unmeasured, unremembered. But that's how most of the universe works. In silence, you, lying there now, can imagine the sky above you, not as a void, but as a page turning each second, another visitor gliding through the margin, unseen by everyone, except, perhaps, a few satellites blinking politely in its wake. And maybe that's the quiet beauty of 3i Atlas. It reminds us that we're part of an atlas still being drawn. Every telescope, every detection, every accidental discovery is another ink mark on the cosmic map. One day, the map might be full, each dot representing a traveler, each line tracing its path across the dark. Until then, we squint and guess. The universe isn't hiding from us. It's simply moving at its own pace, vast and graceful, while we fumble with our calendars and call it mysterious. Somewhere in the archives, buried under noise and forgotten files, the next visitor already waits. A streak of light in an old frame, an unnoticed traveler just waiting for someone curious enough to look again. And that's what makes 3i Atlas more than an object. It's a mirror, reflecting how far we've come and how far we still have to look. Let's open the box we can't open, because that's what 3i Atlas really is: a sealed container, drifting through time. Every interstellar object is a sample jar from another star's laboratory, and this one, forged under a foreign sun, carries more than dust and stone. Inside it may be isotopes we've never measured, minerals that don't exist on Earth, maybe even molecules that predate our solar system entirely. It is, in every sense, a message in a bottle, not written in words, but in chemistry. You can picture it: a dark shard from an ancient workshop, still holding the fingerprints of physics older than our Sunday atoms, arranged in unfamiliar symmetries. Crystals formed under alien gravity, under a temperature scale that never touched our world. Inside, trapped between layers of carbonized ice, could be the record of another dawn, a solar system rising and fading long before ours began. Scientists call these travelers messengers, not because they speak, but because they bring evidence of places we can't visit. One tiny grain scraped from 3I Atlas could rewrite textbooks. The isotopes inside it might show a ratio of hydrogen to deuterium, unique to a forgotten star. Its silicates could reveal the heat of a planet we'll never see. Its organic residues, if there are any, could carry the preface to life itself. We may never touch it. Of course, it's already gone, too fast and too far for any mission to chase. But that's the heartbreak of interstellar science. By the time you fall in love with an object, it's already leaving. So we settle for light, the faint spectral fingerprints that hint at its secrets. Think of that. Everything we know about this traveler comes from photons bouncing off its surface and traveling millions of kilometers to reach us. Each photon a courier carrying gossip from another star, arriving fashionably late, but still in time to tell us something extraordinary. One researcher described 3I Atlas beautifully. It's a time capsule we can't open, but we can still hold it in the light. That's what makes it so intoxicating. The knowledge that this thing, drifting through our solar system, began somewhere else entirely. It's the universe whispering, "You are not an only child." If we could retrieve it, the analysis would be staggering. Scientists dream of it. A probe intercepting an interstellar object mid-flight, scooping particles, measuring isotopes, capturing history before it fades. There are already designs on whiteboards and PowerPoints labeled Project Lyra 2, Comet Interceptor XL, Atlas Retrieval Concept. They read like science fiction outlines. Small spacecraft launched in standby orbit, waiting years for the next wanderer to appear, ready to sprint when gravity sends one our way. Because imagine what might hide inside. Trace gases that tell of alien volcanism, metals forged in supernovae, dust from a red giant's breath. You might find the memory of a vanished world embedded in a pebble. If space is a museum, 3I Atlas is one of its traveling exhibits, a relic carrying postcards from other suns. Even without touching it, the chemistry speaks. The ratios of carbon to oxygen, the spectral fingerprints of cyanide, the dust that glows dull, red under sunlight, all of it forms a story. And in that story is the quiet proof that the building blocks of everything we are not unique. The same materials that make oceans and breath and thought exist everywhere. You, lying there now, might find that oddly comforting. The idea that somewhere, another planet might share your elements: iron for blood, calcium for bones, carbon for dreams. That the dust that made you and the dust that made 3I Atlas once drifted in the same galactic nursery before fate sent them on different paths. It's humbling, isn't it? We spend centuries asking if we're alone, when the chemistry has been answering all along. Every interstellar rock is a messenger that says, "No, you are part of something much bigger, a chain of creation that loops endlessly across the galaxy." 3I Atlas carries that message, not in voice, but in form. It doesn't need to communicate. Its existence is the communication. It's the proof that worlds build worlds, that matter travels, that the story of one star becomes the material of another. We'll probably never know exactly what it carries inside, but that's the beauty of it, because mystery itself is a kind of gift, a reminder that the universe doesn't end where our understanding does. It keeps going, endlessly, scattering clues for anyone patient enough to notice. And so, 3I Atlas moves on, taking its cargo of alien atoms into the dark once more, a bottle cast from a distant shore, drifting through the cosmic tide. We may never open it, but we don't need to. Its silence already tells us everything that matters, that we are made of the same dust, traveling through the same endless sea. Let's talk about gravity, the quiet puppeteer of everything that moves. Because when 3i Atlas brushed past the sun, something elegant happened. It didn't crash, didn't melt, didn't linger. It danced. Its path curved ever so slightly, a gravitational handshake, firm but brief, and then it was gone, flung outward faster than it came in. From our view, it was a cosmic slingshot, a rock older than memory, gaining speed from the same invisible force that pins our feet to the ground. It arrived with momentum, borrowed a little more from the sun's pull, and left with a trajectory so clean you could frame it. The math was exquisite gravity performing its ancient trick, without needing an audience. You can picture it, can't you? A dark shard cutting through sunlight, looping gently around the star at the center of everything we know. The sun didn't notice. It simply tugged, bent the traveler's path, and released it with a whisper of acceleration. Within months, 3i Atlas was already climbing outward again, past the orbit of Jupiter, past the frozen realm of the Kuiper Belt, heading back into the quiet, where light itself fades to memory. It's strange to think about. The same force that keeps your coffee mug on the table is also what propelled this visitor across billions of kilometers. We tend to forget that gravity isn't just an anchor, it's also a catapult. It holds the planets close, yes, but it also teaches wanderers how to leave. Astronomers tracked that curved escape with almost parental pride. Each plotted coordinate confirmed the dance had gone perfectly. The sun had brushed against 3i Atlas like a maestro, adjusting a violin string, a touch so subtle it rewrote velocity without leaving a scar. By the time it cleared the gas giant neighborhoods, the object was moving at over 26 kilometers per second, fast enough to outrun the sun's reach forever. For a brief window, our telescopes caught its fading glint. The sunlight bouncing from its surface grew weaker each night, its brightness curve dropping like a heartbeat slipping into sleep. Then, one evening, it disappeared entirely. Not because it was gone, but because our vision isn't good enough to follow where it went. The solar system doesn't trap such travelers. It simply waves as they go. We're used to orbits, repetition, return, predictability. Everything familiar circles back eventually. But 3i Atlas was different. It came once, said nothing, and left. The sun gave it one last push, and off it went into the deep black, carrying stories we'll never hear. If you could ride along, you'd feel it. That moment of acceleration, the soft gravitational pull, turning into speed. You'd look back and see the sun shrinking a coin of light surrounded by the faint arcs of planets, each tracing its obedient circle. Earth would vanish next, then Mars, then Jupiter's bands, until all that remained was a golden speck behind you, flickering like a memory you can't quite recall. And ahead, silence, the endless dark, speckled with distant fires. The path would flatten out again, smooth and straight, no longer bending toward anything. That's the difference between a visitor and a resident. We orbit, it departs. We belong, it moves on. For astronomers, that slingshot moment was bittersweet. Every frame of data captured during its curve was precious, but every frame also marked its goodbye. They watched it accelerate, knowing that every new decimal in its velocity meant it was leaving them behind. Science, for all its precision, has moments of heartbreak too. One researcher described it poetically. It used our sun like a stepping stone. Another added, it didn't even pause to say thank you. But maybe it didn't need to. Maybe the elegance of motion was thanks enough. The gravitational assist, that subtle bending of a path, is one of the universe's oldest exchanges. Nothing forced, nothing wasted, just energy transferred gracefully, as if space itself were saying, "Go on, keep moving." And that's exactly what 3I Atlas did. It slipped past the orbit of Neptune, past the whispering debris of the Kuiper Belt, and into the dark sea beyond. No tail, no radio echo, no footprint, just momentum, the purest kind of legacy. You can almost imagine the sun watching it go, shining indifferently as always, yet sending one last ray across the void, like a wave. The visitor didn't look back. It couldn't. That's the rule of gravity's gift. Once you take the slingshot, you never return. And so 3I Atlas joined the quiet traffic between stars, another speck among billions, moving through the endless dark with a story only light can tell. We, left behind, kept watching the place it had been, long after it was gone, because sometimes the path out is just as beautiful as the arrival. Let's admit it, someone always asks the question. It doesn't matter if we're looking at a blurry photograph of a rock, a flicker of light, or a slightly suspicious shadow on Mars. Sooner or later, the phrase appears like clockwork. What if it's not natural? It's a fair question. Every mystery in space eventually meets its conspiracy theory twin. And 3I Atlas, quiet and strange as it was no exception. The idea started the way all great speculation does, with one hesitant sentence buried in a late-night thread. Could it, someone wrote, be engineered, the digital equivalent of clearing one's throat in church? At first, everyone laughed. Then they stopped laughing quite so fast. Because when you look at something that behaves oddly, a body that accelerates without visible jets, reflects light inconsistently, and rotates like it's confused about what up means, you can't help but wonder. The idea isn't absurd, only premature. If you were a civilization capable of building star-crossing artifacts, what would they look like? Would they be sleek and metallic, humming with blue light, dripping with narrative convenience? Or would they be subtle, small, inert, camouflaged as debris? After all, the best disguise in the universe is indifference. Imagine this. Billions of years from now, after humanity has gone quiet, the Voyager probes might still drift between stars. No signals, no power, no plaque left legible by time. Just lumps of metal wearing a thick coat of dust. A civilization finding those someday might ask the same question about us. Could this be engineered? Maybe that's the point. Maybe the universe recycles its artifacts until intention becomes erosion. Maybe every civilization leaves behind something that looks suspiciously like a rock. Still, skepticism reigns. The shape of 3I Atlas was irregular, yes, but chaos is nature's signature. Its path followed perfect physics. Its chemistry obeyed ordinary elements. No transmissions, no symmetry, no screws or rivets glinting in reflected sunlight. Just an ancient wanderer obeying gravity's timeless script. And yet, there's a certain poetry in the possibility. You, lying there under your ceiling of human-made constellations, satellites, LEDs, radio noise, know the feeling of wanting to believe that someone, somewhere, might be watching too. That maybe we're not just the first ones awake in an infinite, echoing house. Some astronomers entertained the idea privately, not because they believed it, but because entertaining it was irresistible. If it were engineered, one said, then what purpose would it serve? A beacon? A relic? A probe from a culture that communicates only through curiosity? Another scientist smiled and said, maybe it's just litter. Every civilization has to start polluting somewhere. The debates were half serious, half confessional, because deep down, humans love a good story more than a tidy answer. Artificial origin has gravity of its own, not physical, but emotional. It gives the universe a face, a sense of participation, a cosmic nod that says, "You're not alone in wondering," but the data remained stubbornly dull. The spectroscopic lines were chemical, not metallic. Its trajectory was textbook. No course corrections, no signals, no hidden geometry. It was exactly what it appeared to be. A traveler from elsewhere, shaped by time, sculpted by nothing but chance. That's when the more poetic minds stepped in, those who understood that not everything natural has to be boring. Maybe, one researcher wrote, we keep asking if it's artificial because we don't know how to recognize wonder anymore unless it's made by someone. That line lingered because maybe the reason 3i Atlas feels engineered isn't because it's mechanical, but because it's precise. Its elegance feels intentional, its timing suspiciously personal. It arrived right when we could notice it, right when we needed to remember that the universe is still capable of surprise. That alone feels designed not by intelligence, but by coincidence, masquerading as grace. If you were to look at it now, far beyond Neptune, dim and distant, you'd see nothing that screams constructed, just a shard of stone drifting through the black, reflecting light like memory. No purpose, no agenda, and yet its existence still changes something in us, because that's the truth at the heart of every great space mystery. It doesn't need to be artificial to feel deliberate. The universe itself is the engineer, sculpting with time, gravity, and silence. Maybe, in the end, that's the lesson of 3i Atlas. We don't need aliens to make the cosmos mysterious. It already is perfectly, maddeningly, and magnificently so. And if the best camouflage really is geology, then perhaps everything we see is a disguise, including ourselves. Let's unroll our maps for a moment. The ones full of neat circles, orbital lines, and tidy labels like known, charted, and ours. They're beautiful illusions, really. They make us feel like we've measured the universe, like we've tamed infinity with software and stickers. But objects like 3i Atlas remind us that our maps are temporary sketches drawn on moving sand. For all our satellites and surveys, we've barely seen a fraction of what passes through our own backyard. Space, as it turns out, isn't still. It's not a painting to be admired. It's a conversation, one star speaking to another through the slow exchange of matter. Every system throws stones into the void, and sometimes those stones drift far enough to land in someone else's sky. 3i Atlas was one of them, a sentence from another solar system, passing through ours mid-sentence, before the punctuation arrived. That thought unsettles and humbles in equal measure. We spend so much time mapping what we think is ours. The planets, the asteroids, the comets we've claimed with catalogue numbers. And yet, the cosmos doesn't recognize our boundaries. The borders we draw are conveniences, not realities. Out there, orbits overlap, dust mingles, and gravity tells no one where home begins or ends. You can imagine an astronomer staring at the trajectory map on their screen, a delicate line of light threading through the planetary circles like a misplaced stitch. It enters from nowhere, curves briefly, exits cleanly. No return, no repetition, just motion. And in that simple arc is a quiet lesson. The universe doesn't belong to the ones who stay. It belongs to the ones who move. It's easy to think of space as empty and enormous nothing punctuated by occasional drama, but really, it's teeming. Dust, gas, radiation, ancient fragments, planetary crumbs. A steady rain of travelers slipping through the gravitational fabric of our solar system every day. Most too small or too dark for us to ever notice. The void isn't a desert. It's a river. We're just standing too far downstream to see the current. Every time we detect an interstellar visitor, it's not just a discovery, it's a revelation about how blind we usually are. For every three-eye atlas we find, there could be hundreds we miss, gliding silently through the night sky while our telescopes blink elsewhere. The universe is fluent in motion, and we're only just learning the alphabet. Our instruments are improving, of course, telescopes that watch whole swaths of the sky, detectors tuned to notice even the faintest moving pixel. But even then, we're catching moments, not stories. It's like hearing only the last note of a song and trying to guess the melody. You might think that's discouraging, but it's actually freeing, because each fleeting detection reminds us that we're not the center of the narrative. We're a line in someone else's paragraph. When Three-Eye Atlas passed through, it wasn't paying us a visit. It was continuing a journey that began before our species, before our planet, maybe even before our Sunday. And yet, somehow, we were here to notice. That's the fragile miracle of observation, timing. We caught it mid-conversation, a brief inflection in a galactic dialogue that's been ongoing for billions of years. Long after it's gone, the story continues, other stars tossing their fragments into the dark, other travelers gliding unnoticed through the interstellar tide. If you could step back, way back, beyond the sun, beyond the planets, you'd see the solar system not as a tidy set of orbits, but as a swirl of trails, each comet, asteroid, and dust grain tracing arcs of light like a slow, glowing storm. In the middle, our little blue planet spins, believing itself central, not realizing it's merely a participant in a much larger choreography. Objects like Three-Eye Atlas remind us that even permanence is temporary, that known space is an illusion that lasts only as long as our attention. The universe redraws its maps constantly, every orbit a moving coastline, every comet a shifting landmark. And yet, there's comfort in that, because if everything moves, then nothing is truly lost. The fragments that leave one system find their way to another. The dust that escapes one star's gravity becomes the seed of a new planet somewhere else. The cosmos is recycling itself endlessly, whispering continuity through change. So yes, our maps are temporary sketches on a living canvas. But maybe that's the point. They remind us to keep updating, to keep looking, to stay curious. Because every once in a while, the universe sends something like Three-Eye Atlas through our neighborhood, and for a moment, we get to listen in on the conversation between stars. Let's imagine the goodbye. Three-Eye Atlas, already far past Neptune's distant orbit, continues outward, unhurried, unbothered, and entirely unstoppable. When it leaves, it won't slow down. Nothing will catch it. There are no breaks in interstellar space, no friction, no soft landing at the edge of anything. It will glide between stars again, unseen, for another million years, or maybe longer. Every few centuries, a stray grain of dust will tap its surface, a microscopic hello that chips away a molecule or two. Cosmic rays will tattoo its skin with atomic scars. But otherwise, it will remain what it's always been, patient, enduring, profoundly indifferent. In that way, it's everything we're not. You can picture it now, drifting in perfect darkness. The sun, once a blinding furnace, has dwindled to a faint coin behind it. The Milky Way stretches ahead, its stars arranged like glowing dust across a velvet sea. The silence out there isn't empty. It's full of distance. Every kilometer it travels is a sentence written in the language of momentum. There's something oddly beautiful about that kind of persistence. We, the noisy, restless species that sent telescopes and theories chasing after it, can barely keep a thought alive for more than a few minutes. Meanwhile, this rock, this quiet, indifferent traveler, is content to keep moving for millions of years, never wondering where it's going, never needing to know. We measure our lives in hours and deadlines. 3i Atlas measures its journey in epochs. To it, the rise and fall of civilizations are nothing more than flickers. The dinosaurs were a warm afternoon. Humanity is a passing shimmer on one small blue pebble it didn't even notice. Somewhere between the stars, it will drift past regions we can only imagine. Clouds of ionized gas glowing like fog, the faint trails of other wanderers, maybe even the debris fields of forgotten solar systems. Each encounter will alter it slightly. A new dent, a new layer of frost, a fresh story etched into its surface. But it won't remember. Memory is a human privilege, or perhaps a curse. If you could stand on it, impossible, of course. But imagine the silence would be unbearable. No air, no echo, not even the vibration of sound through matter. Just the faint hum of your own heartbeat reverberating in your suit. The stars wouldn't twinkle. They'd stand perfectly still, unblinking. The horizon would curve infinitely, like the inside of eternity. That's the strange irony of 3i Atlas. In its lifelessness, it achieves something close to immortality. It doesn't burn, doesn't decay, doesn't rush. It simply is. It doesn't care that it's an interstellar celebrity on Earth for a few weeks of observation time. It doesn't even know we exist. Its patience outlasts our entire species' attention span. Meanwhile, back home, we're still talking about it, building models, arguing on forums, writing scripts about its possible origins. We can't help it. Humans are storytellers. By design, we need to wrap meaning around motion, narrative around noise. 3i Atlas doesn't need a story. It's content with trajectory. If you think about it, that's the ultimate cosmic contrast. We fear stillness and seek purpose. It has neither, and yet remains untroubled. Perhaps that's why it feels so alien. Not because it's from another star, but because it represents something we can barely comprehend. Total acceptance of the infinite. In the endless dark, there are no destinations, only direction. Every traveler, natural or otherwise, moves in obedience to momentum, not intention. And that's the quiet genius of objects like 3i Atlas. They remind us that existence doesn't require purpose to persist. It will pass through other systems, maybe briefly grazing the gravity of unknown suns. Some of those stars will be long dead by the time it gets there. Others will not yet exist. It might cross paths with more dust, more debris, perhaps even another lonely object cast out from its own home. Their meeting will be brief, a silent near miss, in an ocean too large for coincidence. Then it will move on again, always forward, always the same, a survivor of countless collisions that never happened. And maybe, just maybe, that's what makes it sacred in its own quiet way. Because while everything living struggles for meaning, this one unfeeling stone just continues, endlessly, without hesitation or hope. It's a kind of serenity. We'll never know the peace of not needing to ask why. So as 3i Atlas disappears into the deep black, becoming another invisible note in the song of motion, it leaves us with a final reminder. Not everything moving through the universe is seeking something. Some things just drift, and in that drifting, they find eternity. Let's take a step back from the telescope for a moment. Because the truth is, when we look out into space, we aren't really seeing the universe. We're seeing our reflection in it. There's a quiet irony in studying objects like 3i Atlas. We aim our instruments, gather our data, and peer into the abyss for clues about the cosmos. But what we really uncover, time after time, is ourselves. We call it exploration, but often it's projection. Every pixel of light becomes a Rorschach test for human curiosity. We stare into the dark and ask questions that reveal more about our need for meaning than about the stars themselves. 3. iAtlas didn't ask to be mysterious. It simply is. We're the ones who turned its silence into a riddle. There's something almost comical about it. Generations of scientists and philosophers leaning over their instruments, squinting at a speck of light, arguing whether it's rock or revelation. We can't help ourselves. Pattern seeking is our superpower and our flaw. Give us static, and we'll find a melody. Give us randomness, and we'll sketch constellations until the sky feels like home. It's easy to forget that the cosmos doesn't care what we think. It doesn't write stories, draw metaphors, or build meaning into motion. Yet we do, constantly. We give everything names, categories, labels. We invent order where there is none. The moment 3 iAtlas appeared on our screens, we started building a mythology around it. The traveler, the messenger, the ghost rock. Not because it needed those titles, but because we did. In a way, astronomy is just anthropology projected outward. Every rock we study becomes a mirror, reflecting our own fears and fascinations. When we say, it's alien, what we really mean is, it's not us, and that scares us. When we say, it's natural, what we mean is, it fits our rules, and that comforts us. Either way, the object remains unchanged. It's our interpretation that shifts. Think of it like this. 3 iAtlas is indifferent, but we can't stand indifference. We look into its stillness and hear an echo. Its lack of communication feels like an invitation to speak for it. The cosmos says nothing, and we call that mystery. Maybe that's why science feels so personal, even when it's about things billions of kilometers away. Because the deeper we look into the void, the more it reflects our own obsessions back at us, our craving for structure, our desperate little rebellion against chaos. You, lying there now, might know that feeling, that quiet need to make sense of the day, to fit the random noise of life into a pattern that feels intentional. It's the same impulse that drives astronomers to chart orbits, poets to write about stars, and philosophers to wonder if the universe is aware of being observed. And yet, what if silence is just silence? What if the universe isn't whispering messages or hiding lessons, but simply existing? That's hard for us to accept, because for humans, meaning is oxygen and space. Well, it doesn't breathe. Still, that doesn't mean our questions are wasted. Maybe the act of asking is the point. Maybe 3 iAtlas doesn't mirror our vanity, but our persistence, the stubborn insistence that even in the face of indifference, we'll keep wondering anyway. Every measurement we make, every late-night observation, every wild theory scribbled on a whiteboard is proof that we're trying not to conquer the universe, but to understand our place inside it. The object may be indifferent, but we aren't. That's the difference. There's humility in that, too. Because while 3 iAtlas will drift silently for millions of years, we will eventually fade. Our telescopes will go dark, our languages forgotten, our questions unanswered. But for a brief span, we were here noticing, thinking, dreaming. And maybe that's enough. Maybe the reflection we see in that cosmic mirror isn't vanity at all, but awareness. The universe, trying to understand itself through us, however fleetingly. Because when you think about it, every act of observation, every glimpse of a passing star, every whisper of data is a kind of communion. The cosmos doesn't care about us, But that doesn't mean we can't care about it. And so, even as 3i Atlas disappears beyond our reach, it leaves behind something far more enduring than data. A reminder that the greatest mysteries aren't out there at all. They're the ones that look back when we stare into the dark. Let's rewind the clock, not by years or centuries, but by eons, to a time when suns were newborn and chaos was a daily weather forecast. Scientists believe wanderers like 3i Atlas are the leftovers of that creation, the debris of planetary birth. When new solar systems form, the process is less like a symphony and more like a bar fight in slow motion. Dust gathers, clumps grow, worlds collide, orbits shift, and fragments are flung outward in every direction. 3i Atlas could be one of those fragments, a fossil from another sun's violent youth, carrying memories written not in language but in mineral veins and isotopic ratios. It's cosmic archaeology, except the artifact is still moving, still gliding through the interstellar dark, older than any map, older than our idea of home. You can picture the scene. A young star blazes in the void, surrounded by a swirling disk of dust and gas, a storm of beginnings. Inside that disk, rocks slam into each other with the energy of mountains colliding. Some stick, some shatter. Out of this chaos, planets are born round, molten, glowing. But not every fragment finds a stable orbit. Some get thrown out like sparks from a forge. That's how wanderers like 3i Atlas begin their long drift. It's strange to think of it that way, that what we see as an interstellar visitor is actually a memory from another world's creation, a chunk of history ejected before that history even began. If it could speak, its voice would carry the accent of another star. Planets remember their youth differently. Ours hides its early chaos under oceans and crust, rewriting itself every few million years. But objects like 3i Atlas keep their scars. They are the geologic journals of the universe, unedited, unpolished, unread until chance brings them near enough to glimpse. Imagine the surface of such a relic up close. Frozen carbon crust over fractured silicate, ridges etched by radiation older than Earth. Beneath that surface, layers of compressed chemistry, minerals formed under pressures we can't recreate, at temperatures we can only guess. Each striation is a timestamp, a record of violent birth. One could say that planets are terrible at keeping memories. They shift, burn, and erode. But these interstellar orphans, the ones flung free before the drama settled, remember everything. They are the survivors of cosmic adolescence, drifting reminders that creation and destruction are the same dance. Somewhere in a distant system, the star that birthed 3i Atlas still burns, or maybe it's gone cold by now. Around it, the remaining planets spin peacefully, unaware that one of their siblings has been wandering for billions of years. It's a quiet tragedy, or perhaps just physics being itself. You, lying there now, might find a kind of comfort in that thought, that even rocks remember, that matter carries history, the way we carry stories differently, but with equal persistence. Every atom on Earth once belonged to something else, a star, a cloud, a collision. We are all recycled stardust, with just enough memory left to wonder about where we came from. When scientists study objects like 3i Atlas, they're not just collecting data, they're reading a fragment of autobiography written by the universe itself. Every isotope ratio is a sentence. Every mineral layer is a paragraph. The difference is that we have to translate the story through light instead of language. It's humbling, really. We often think of the cosmos as indifferent, but it keeps excellent records. It stores every birth, every explosion, every misfired orbit in matter itself. And sometimes, one of those records drifts close enough for us to read a few lines before it moves on again. So when 3I Atlas passed through, what we saw wasn't just a rock, it was memory, a physical piece of history, older than time as we measure it, unbroken by meaning, unspoiled by interpretation. It didn't need to tell us anything. Its existence was the message. Worlds are built from chaos, and chaos never truly ends. And perhaps that's the deepest kind of remembering there is. Not the conscious kind, not the sort we write down, but the quiet persistence of form through time. The universe doesn't forget. It just keeps moving. Its memories don't fade. They drift. 3I Atlas is one of those memories, still traveling, still unchanging, still carrying the trace of a long-vanished Sunday. It doesn't know it's a fossil, doesn't care that we've given it a name. But for us, catching even a glimpse of that history, even for a moment, reminds us that nothing is ever truly lost. Because planets may forget their beginnings, but the stones they cast away remember everything. Let's turn our gaze upward for a moment, slowly, softly, and think about what it really means to look. We like to imagine we're the watchers, that our telescopes are one-way mirrors, and the cosmos is a vast, unblinking audience awaiting our questions. But maybe, just maybe, we've had it backward all along. There's a poetic comfort in knowing we were never alone. Even in geological time, every so often, something drifts by quiet, ancient, unknowable to remind us that the universe doesn't end at the edge of our solar wind. Objects like 3I Atlas prove that. They are the cosmic postcards that arrive without a return address, their mere existence whispering, "You're part of something much larger." For billions of years, our little blue planet has been sending light outward, radio chatter, radar pulses, glints of city glow, auroras waving like signatures, and through all that time, wanderers like 3I Atlas have been passing through the emptiness between stars, indifferent but observant, coated in light from every sun they've ever brushed past. Perhaps, in some small poetic way, we've all been reflected in their surfaces, a galaxy of glances exchanged across eternity. We look into the sky and see infinity, but what if infinity glances back? It's not a spooky thought, not really. More like the warmth of realization that we're not the only ones paying attention, not the only ones who notice. The cosmos itself is an observer, not conscious in the human sense, but constant, ever recording, always reflecting. Every photon we send out becomes part of its memory. Every passing object becomes an accidental witness. You can imagine 3I Atlas coasting through the outskirts of our system, glancing if a rock could glance at the pale flicker of Earth's atmosphere, a blue shimmer, faint, fragile, unlike anything else it has seen in millions of years. And then it continues, unchanged, carrying that flicker as just another reflection on its skin. For us, that's monumental. For it, it's Tuesday. Still, there's something quietly humbling about that imbalance. We build observatories to peer deeper into the cosmos, to make maps and models, to feel like we understand what's out there. But the truth is, we're just one more light in the dark, one more brief flare in the cosmic panorama. When we watch the universe, we become part of what it's showing. Every atom of your body, the iron in your blood, the calcium in your bones, the carbon in your skin once belonged to stars that exploded long before Earth existed. You were observed before you were born. The sky's been keeping tabs for a very long time. Maybe that's why encounters like 3I Atlas move us so deeply. They trigger something ancient in us, that awareness of being seen, of participating in a story far beyond ourselves. It's not about contact or communication. It's about acknowledgement, a kind of cosmic nod across the void. We've always projected our longing upward. Early humans traced gods into constellations. Sailors charted destinies by starlight. Poets found meaning in every eclipse. The universe didn't answer then, and it doesn't now, but it doesn't need to. Its silence is the reply. You, listening now, can feel it too. That quiet sense that the night sky isn't just a backdrop, but a presence, calm, endless, maybe even attentive. When you look up, you're not gazing into nothing. You're part of an ancient dialogue, one that doesn't use words or sound, but light and time. Perhaps 3I Atlas is one of the sky's emissaries, not a messenger, but a reminder. It passes by to show us how vast and interconnected everything truly is. That we are neither the center nor the edge of anything, just one glowing thread in an infinite tapestry. And who's to say the story ends with us as the observers? Maybe other eyes, mechanical, biological, or something stranger have also paused to notice us. Maybe to them, we are the mysterious travelers, a faint dot, orbiting a modest star, flashing radio waves into the dark like fireflies testing the air. If that's true, then we've already been catalogued, not as conquerors or explorers, but as participants. We, too, are part of the background noise, the steady hum of a living galaxy. So, the next time you look up and see the stars, imagine them blinking back not with malice or message, but with recognition. Because the universe, vast and silent as it is, doesn't just exist around us. It includes us. It watches with us. And maybe that's enough to know that even in the unimaginable stillness between stars, we were noticed, however briefly, by a passing traveler who never stops. Let's fast forward to the quiet part, the part that always comes after discovery, when attention fades and the world forgets. Eventually, the news cycle moved on. The headlines that once shouted about a visitor from another star were replaced by louder curiosities, new exoplanets, supernovae, and the latest black hole behaving badly. The internet forgot 3I Atlas in favor of fresher mysteries. That's the rhythm of curiosity, brief, bright, and always hungry for something new. The papers stopped mentioning it. The telescopes turned their gaze elsewhere, toward objects that promised more drama. And somewhere beyond Neptune, 3I Atlas kept going. No applause, no farewell, no lingering signal, just the hum of deep space and a trail of fading photons marking where it had been. Its story didn't end. It simply left our field of view. Imagine the last photograph we took of it, a faint pixel in a black sea, almost lost in background noise. Somewhere in that blur was a traveler continuing its eternal glide, unbothered by our attention span. We, the noisy species that insists on making meaning out of everything, wrote our headlines and moved on. It did what it was always going to do. Nothing new, nothing old, just forward. It's funny, isn't it? How we treat cosmic phenomena like celebrities. We discover them, name them, speculate wildly about them, and then abandon them the moment the light fades. The universe doesn't do closure. It just keeps expanding. If you could hear the silence out there, and of course, you can't. Not really, it would sound like indifference. Not cruel, just vast. The kind of silence that doesn't require a reply. Out past the orbits of the last icy worlds, there's no wind, no echo, no signal strong enough to carry a farewell, only motion. Somewhere in that silence, 3I Atlas drifts, its surface slowly cooling as sunlight fades. What little heat it gained during its brief pass near the sun has long since radiated away. Now it's colder than logic, coated in a thin layer of cosmic frost. Each grain of dust that hits it carves a microscopic crater punctuation in an endless sentence no one is writing. And yet, that feels strangely comforting, because even if no one's watching, it continues. Even if we forget, it persists. That's something humans rarely manage. We crave resolution endings, conclusions, moral takeaways. But the universe prefers ellipses. It leaves things open-ended, looping forever between beginnings and middles. 3. Atlas is one of those loops. A story without a final chapter. A journey that never circles back. You, lying there now, might know that feeling, that slow fading of excitement once something new becomes routine. The telescope operators felt it too. For a few months, their nights revolved around this one flicker of motion across the stars. Then, it slipped away, and the screens went back to static. The next object appeared. The next project began. The machinery of wonder reset itself. But still, there's a trace. In the archives, in the data logs, in the faint lines of code that recorded its trajectory, 3 Atlas remains. Scientists still stumble upon its name sometimes, while researching something else. Oh right, they'll say. That one, like a ghost of a memory half forgotten, still wandering in digital space. Maybe that's what all discoveries become. Stories that flicker briefly and then dim into the background hum of progress. But in some quiet corner of human imagination, they keep orbiting. If you could follow 3 Atlas now, you'd see it passing through the interstellar dark, surrounded by the faint glow of cosmic radiation. The stars don't look like pinpoints from there. They're more like smudges of ancient light, barely distinguishable from the black. It travels onward, carrying its secrets, not realizing it ever had an audience. Back here, the telescopes hum on, searching for the next anomaly, the next name to add to our expanding list of things that briefly held our attention. But none of that diminishes what it was, or what it still is. Its story isn't over. We just lost the ability to watch it unfold. And that might be the most honest kind of ending. There is not a conclusion, but a fade. The kind where the music doesn't stop. It just drifts into silence. Because the cosmos doesn't need applause, or closure, or commentary. It just keeps moving, indifferent but eternal. So somewhere, in the endless dark, beyond the reach of light, 3 Atlas continues its journey. Alone, unseen, but not forgotten, at least. Not entirely. Because even if our eyes can't follow it, our imagination still does. Let's skip ahead a little years from now, when 3 Atlas is just another line in a database, another whisper in the archive of forgotten wonders. By then, we may have found others, 4 5 10 something. They'll blur together in memory, their names sounding like chapters from a very long, very quiet book. But each will whisper the same message, steady as a heartbeat through time. The universe is busy, and we're just part of the traffic. Future astronomers will read about these first wanderers, the way we read about early explorers, squinting at old data, wondering how primitive our instruments must have felt. They'll look at our grainy images and smile at the imperfections, the way you might smile at an ancestor's black and white photograph. They'll see how much we wanted to understand, how desperately we tried to capture significance from a few specks of reflected sunlight. By then, 3 Atlas will be far beyond reach, cold, unbothered, drifting toward another star's light. It will pass through unseen regions, where even the faint glow of our sun is only a rumor. It might cross paths with another traveler, maybe even glance through the dust halo of a newborn system. an ancient visitor watching new worlds being born. And when that happens, no one will know. No signal, no record. Just another page turned in the endless story of motion. But we'll remember, not the numbers, not the coordinates, not even the chemical compositions. What lingers won't be data, but the feeling, that brief spark of recognition when we realize something from another sun had passed through our sky. For a moment, we were no longer an isolated dot in the black. We were part of a conversation that had begun long before we arrived. That's the quiet magic of encounters like this. They remind us that discovery isn't about possession, it's about perspective. 3. Atlas didn't belong to us. It simply brushed past our awareness. It didn't change course when we named it, didn't pause when we pointed our telescopes, didn't flinch when we speculated about its origins. It remained itself perfectly indifferent, yet somehow transformative just by being seen. You, lying there now, might feel that same kind of wonder, that gentle, almost childlike awe, that something so vast could pass so silently. It's the kind of feeling that slips between logic and dream, where the universe stops being a science project and becomes something intimate. Maybe that's what we'll remember most the moment we looked up. The sense of being part of something vast, mysterious, and briefly illuminated. 3. Atlas didn't bring answers, but it brought awareness. For a few weeks, millions of eyes pointed toward the same patch of sky, connected by curiosity. That's no small thing, because every time we look up, we become a little less certain and a little more humble. We remember that our maps are temporary, our measurements incomplete, our understanding fragile, but the act of looking, that's eternal. In a way, 3 Atlas gave us something even more valuable than information. It gave us perspective. It reminded us that the cosmos isn't a stage built for us, but a boundless expanse that occasionally lets us play witness. It showed us that even fleeting moments can alter our sense of belonging, that sometimes revelation doesn't shout. It drifts by quietly and leaves a shimmer of wonder behind. When the next one comes, 4 5 10 something will greet it differently, maybe with better instruments, sharper eyes, faster probes. But beneath all the technology, it'll still be the same impulse that drives us, the desire to connect, to understand, to know that we are part of a greater pattern we can barely glimpse. And if someday another civilization looks up and sees our debris passing by a probe, a fragment, a forgotten satellite, maybe they'll feel the same thing, that sudden, fragile awareness of company in the dark, because that's what we'll remember about 3 Atlas. Not the data, not the debates, but the reminder that we are not the only ones moving through the void, that for a fleeting moment, something from another sun shared our sky and made us look up, and that quiet, brief, and unrepeatable is revelation enough.